Back at it on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast with you as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, coming to us from the road, as we can tell, not his normal NFL.com studio that we see on TV all the time.
Pretty boring background, Jeff.
I'm making Sam. I've beaten Sam for the boring background today.
Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star is with us as well, columnist for your Kansas City Star. I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Of course, we're talking Chiefs football here on a Friday morning. If you're catching us via the podcast, 10 a.m., you can be in the chat room, be a part of the conversation. Fridays at 10 a.m. Central. We're talking about the offensive tackle. Where is your level of confidence with Josh Simmons after this mini camp? Chiefs are talking about him a lot. Are they preparing to make the same mistake they did with Kingsley Suamataia, just giving the job to someone, or will he actually earn it if Jaylen Moore doesn't start? The Chiefs waste $30 million on the tackle they signed from the 49ers. Could the Mahomes-Kelce relationship become problematic for the Chiefs? What is a successful season for Kelce? All the wideouts have been here for a while. No excuses, right? They now know Patrick Mahomes, so we expect the best out of them. Is Mahomes motivated by his place in history? We're going to try to get to all of that right here, right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We are off and running here on a Friday. How about it? We've concluded mini camp, and we continue to hear Jeff over and over and over again. Josh Simmons ready to go, man. It's all good. Nothing to see here. What do we got? Did the Chiefs just game the game? I talked with some folks in Houston, Texas today, and there is some consternation when they hear reports out of Kansas City that Josh Simmons is going to start. They're all in an uproar that the Houston Texans didn't take Josh Simmons. So not only is this a thing about the Chiefs, it apparently affects other teams that are like, ooh, we could get the best left tackle in football and start him. What do we got here? Did the Chiefs game the game, or are we barreling down Kingsley Suamataia part two?
Yeah, well, look, I don't trust anything that happened at this time of the year. And so I understand the need to be positive and to be hopeful and optimistic and all that. But when guys are running around in shorts and jerseys at this time of the year, you're not getting a true indication of what a player can do, especially someone who plays alongside the offensive line or defensive line. And so I know how Andy Reid is. I know that he wants to sell this probably to the kid as well, be honest with you. But at the end of the day, I don't think, as Sam has said many times, the Chiefs had any medical information that no other team had on Josh Simmons. It's just a question of how much they want to get him into the lineup and get him playing. And so I hope that this is not an indication that they want to rush him. I hope that it's an indication that he's progressing well and rehabbing well. But yeah, I'll have a better sense of who he is when he's lining up against pass rushers in training camp and in preseason games, and we see how he fares there.
Yeah. How about you, Sam? What are you taking this constant conversation about Josh Simmons and seemingly constant positive response from the Kansas City Chiefs? What's it all mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, Andy Reid is trying to find ways to one-up himself, like every week in these press conferences. I mean, now he's ready to start. I mean, and the Chiefs anticipated when they drafted him that he would not be ready even for the first day of training camp. I think they thought that maybe by week 2 of training camp that he'd be ready to roll, and then you could see what he's got. So I think if nothing else, he's ahead of schedule medically from what they thought he would be, and therefore they'll be able to start evaluating them in those practices that Jeff mentioned, in those practices that actually entail pads where you actually can judge the trenches. I went to every availability that we had for media looks at these players over the summer, and Jeff's right in his description of it. Like you can get some assessments of some wide receivers and cornerbacks out there, even though the cornerbacks aren't pressing. But you can't get the same sort of assessment of anybody in the trenches as far as making conclusions about what a rookie is going to be based on what you saw in the summer. What we can tell is what they think of them. And I think this is absolutely barreling towards Josh Simmons being the first left tackle in the first rep of camp when they arrive in St. Joe in a month from now.
Let's back up because you mentioned it. Andy Reid topping himself, right? This is not the nature of Andy Reid. This is not what he does. He gets pissed off when he's asked questions over and over again. If you're going to pummel me with questions, right? Like he gets irritated and wants to give no information. This may be absolutely nothing. This may have been Andy Reid went to a don't know, a psychological corporate psychologist who said, this is how you got to play these people. Let me give you, they're going to go for that question anyway. So tell them this, stop fighting with them. Don't, just tell them this. And then they go away. And like, it's out of character for Andy Reid. And again, it may be absolute nothing. I just gave you some fictitious theory on why he could be doing something different, but it makes no sense to me. Why is he answering this different, Jeff? Like, I can't figure out what the motive is for a guy who's been as successful as he has been to suddenly be like, okay, I'm going to do this different.
Yeah, the only thing I go back to, it's either one or two things. Either the guy is making great progress and they're super excited about what he can do, and their medical people are reinforcing that, or it's, hey, let's get him in the right place mentally to do this. Because I just have a hard time believing that a guy who had a major knee injury last year, who's coming into the NFL, who hasn't played football in whatever it is, 7-8 months, 9 months probably now, is all of a sudden going to have his head in a place where he can go out and start a football game and be a productive player. I think part of this is a sales job to Josh Simmons and letting him know we believe in you. We're excited about you. You're out there with the first team. So when you go and you're doing whatever rehab you still have to do, you got a little more pep in your step and you're feeling like this is going in the right direction. But I agree with you. I've never seen him just hyped up about a rookie player and talking as much about a rookie as much as he's talked about this kid in the last couple months. And so again, I hope it's not a mistake, because it could easily fall into that category of the guy you just mentioned a minute ago, Kingsley Suamataia.
Well, Sam, is it a combination? What Jeff just laid out there? Like they're trying to build up his confidence, and it's because they already don't like plan B, right? Like they've looked at it and they want this to happen, and so they're just going to try to will it, which would frankly be a replay of last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the mistake they made with Kingsley Suamataia. The difference is, you mentioned plan B. They had no plan B last year. Like Wanye Morris was plan B a year ago, and now you do, in which case it's the point I've made throughout the offseason is this guy has to win the job. You can't just give him the job because the best case scenario is your number one draft pick ends up winning the job and ends up starting from day one. Like, he has to actually go out and win the job. I think we've often seen national reports of first round picks for the Chiefs just tearing up, OTAs, but this is different. Like, Andy Reid's putting his name on that. And I think that it absolutely is just his honesty. He believes this is where Josh Simmons is. He thinks he's made great progress. He's excited about what he's seen. And, a point about this injury that's really important, actually 2 points about this injury that are really important. First of all, if Josh Simmons was still in college, Ohio State would have questions about whether or not he was going to be ready for week 1 because of the nature of this injury. But another important point about this injury, it's not just your preparedness to come back from it. It's your susceptibility to be injured again. That's what's often happened with this particular injury. So my point in mentioning that is that it's not necessarily that Josh Simmons shouldn't be ready for week 1, that it is some pie in the sky thing to expect him to be able to play in week 1. Because I think some teams' hesitancy in the draft was, okay, we think he could be healthy now, but we worry about his health in the future based on overcompensating for this injury. And so I don't think that the Chiefs are rushing him to this spot. Because like I said, they were content to wait till training camp to roll out Josh Simmons in contact drills. Now, this isn't full contact, what they experienced in the summer, but they still did not think that he would be participating in those drills, and he was. And that's a credit. It's a thing we probably haven't mentioned enough. This is a credit to the player, too. Like, he's worked really hard to get to this point.
A couple from the chat room. Blake says, might be out of character in words, but not so much in action. They gave Kingsley left tackle on a platter last year. That is true. Kingsley needed to be pumped up. Simmons doesn't look like he needs motivating. I think that's an interesting point. I want to come back to that one here with you real quick, Sam, in a second. And then this is just Reid trying to double down on Simmons like me, trying to catch up. Tommy says on a late night West Coast football game during the season, double up, catch up. Never, ever has it steered me wrong. Double up, catch up. Tough Saturday, double up late night. You always got Hawaii with the really late spot to really get it all back. Good call, Tommy. I like that one. Sam, to the point about, Simmons doesn't need this. One of the kind of MOs on him, when they talked about immaturity, right? That was one of the knocks. There was allegedly one team that somebody reported that a team had told them, we're not worried about the knee. We're worried about his immaturity. Right? That was a question we heard a number of times. We haven't seen immature in the way I think most people would hear it, but we heard about maybe there was an arrogance there. We've heard a hint of that, right? Haven't we? But I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the other thing we need to offer up is, let me underscore what you said, Sam, that he looks great. He looks bouncy out there. He looks athletic. This is just genuine Andy Reid excitement. He is confident. He is ready to go. They literally like everything they see. Yes, it sounds exactly like Kingsley Suamataia, a different pedigree of a player. This is all about injury and not about abilities, right? So, should we maybe just all relax and go, okay, it's great. Left tackle's fixed.
I'm not ready to go that far, but I will say, look, I mean, I wrote in the Kansas City Star a few weeks ago about this whole thing that could be repeating the mistake for Kingsley Suamataia, that you can't just give this guy the job because you want him to win the job. The other side of this is, though, Kingsley is just one example of a rookie left tackle not working out. Josh Simmons should also not play from behind because Kingsley Suamataia didn't work out. Like, he still should get the opportunity. He should still get the chance, but that's what it should be, is the chance to win the job. He should not have the job itself before they head to St. Joe. So what does that look like, I think, is the good question, because I do think when they roll out at St. Joe and they do their first team drill, I anticipate that Josh Simmons will be lining up with the starters at left tackle. So what does it look like to make him actually win the job if he's going to get the first rep in St. Joe? I think when you have bad days, Jaylen Moore still needs to be rolling in there, especially when you have back-to-back bad days. Jaylen Moore might get an entire day. Like, that's what winning the job looks like. And the thing that maybe I didn't give the Chiefs enough cushion on a year ago is, if they wanted to do that, they didn't have great options to do that with Kingsley Suamataia, because Wanya Morris missed days at camp last year, and in which case, who are you going to roll in at left tackle? And because Wanya Morris wasn't winning the job either at left tackle. This time you do have a fallback plan to implement that strategy to say this has to be earned with Josh Simmons.
Jeff, we're not getting as many questions about Kingsley Suamataia at left guard, but we hear positivity. The way he is, do you fear that that's going to be the mistake? That, again, the favorite, okay, Josh Simmons is the real deal, right? We can hope for the best if you're a Chiefs fan there, but at Kingsley Suamataia, they are making the same mistake with Suamataia. It's just with Suamataia at left guard and giving him that position now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think
because I'm going to be clear, he didn't grade well against the Broncos.
Yeah,
right, according to PFF.
Yeah.
I think he has experience.
Yeah,
not successful.
I think all three of these guys, Jaylen Moore included, are mysteries right now. And I think the big mistake that we can all make in evaluating this at this stage of the game is just thinking that, okay, it can't be worse than it was last year. It doesn't mean it can't be bad. It may not be as bad, but it can still be bad. There's plenty of, to Simmons' case, there's plenty of left tackles who don't work out in their first year and have to go through some growing pains. And with Suamataia, he's a player who they had high hopes for, and they're still going to see big things in him and hope that he can make this transition. And I think it is a mistake. I think when you have as much success as the Chiefs have had, especially as Andy Reid has had in his career, you do feel like everything you touch turns to gold after a while. You do feel like you've got a lot of, credibility and benefit of the doubt stacked up to work in your favor when you're doing these kind of things. But ultimately, it does behoove you to let guys compete. I think that I think both these positions should be up for competition. We should be hearing more about how Jaylen Moore is doing and Caliendo is doing, because it's a big deal. That their offensive line is not fixed just because they have new names in there. It's fixed when they have guys who they trust and can be actually responsible and incredible. So I'm not buying the Suamataia hype either.
Yeah, I do. When you said it can't get worse, Matt, Buddy Bell has entered the chat. It can always get worse. It could be worse.
It can't get worse at left tackle than it was last year. It cannot get worse at left tackle than it was last year.
Terry says start the best 5, put more at right tackle. Right, like that's a possibility. Let's wrap this part of the discussion on the front of what should it look like, right? What should the competition look like? What should we see in St. Joe? What should we see in preseason games? What would be the best view of this, Sam?
Well, I think what I said with Josh Simmons, as far as like when you have bad days, other guys roll in and they get your reps. Like the consequences happen in training camp in the way that the consequences happen mid games last year. Like I hadn't covered a team, and I don't know how many teams anyone in this league had covered where we saw 2 left tackles get benched in the second half of games in the fourth quarter. And look, I wrote with the Kingsley Suamataia situation, I think is another thing that, like you mentioned, we shouldn't assume it's a given, and the Chiefs shouldn't assume it's a given because that's what they did a year ago. I remember after that Bengals game last year when he got benched in week 2, great win, right? I mean, the Chiefs start 2-0. They've beaten the Ravens and Bengals. Everyone talked about what a difficult schedule that was going to be to open the season. The Chiefs start 2-0. And I remember I wrote all about left tackle and said, this is a problem, because I went into the locker room after that game and I talked to Kingsley Suamataia one-on-one, and you could tell his confidence was done. And you wondered about the future of the player at that time. And I just thought, this isn't a one-time benching. Like, this is going to be a season-long problem. And I remember I got a ton of emails saying, too negative, the team's 2-0. But you could just tell based on talking to the player, this was going to be a thing. And so with Kingsley Suamataia, to me, that's the key question, is where is he mentally? And by the way, that's not a criticism of the player. He shouldn't have been confident after those 2 games that he had. So to me, that's where is he at mentally when he goes in and plays left guard? Does he believe he can do it? And what's it going to be like when he fails? This is, to me, a little bit strange, as like the MJ Melendez question, right? In spring training with the Royals is he switched up his swing. Looks great. What happens when he goes 0 for 20? That's Kingsley Suamataia this season. Is he has a great game, terrific. What happens when he has a really bad game? How does he respond? And that's what we don't know yet. And that's, to be honest, what the Chiefs can't know until it actually occurs in a game.
Well, and my thing is the same holds true for Josh Simmons, because we don't know how he's going to respond. And I don't think it's as easy as saying, okay, when he has a bad day, pull him out.
The one thing real quick, Jeff, on it, we don't know if he's going to fold, right? And that's I think Sam's point. We've seen Kingsley Suamataia fold.
Yeah, but we don't even know if his knee is going to be okay throughout the entire year. I mean, he could have physical issues that hold him back. Oh, the point I'm making about Josh Simmons, where I'll wrap on that one, is they are setting the bar very high for him. And there are still very legitimate things that could lead to him not being successful. And if he's not, all of us on this podcast, the people in the chat room and us talking right now are going to be asking a ton of questions of him and the coaching staff about what went wrong. And for my money, there's really only 6 spots on the NFL team, on a football team, that when you start replacing people, people notice it and it becomes an issue. One is quarterback, and the other 5 are offensive linemen. You start pulling those guys out, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. It's a big deal if you're dealing with liability issues in your parking lot. Let Gann Asphalt and Concrete give you a perfect parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Your favorites are back. Kansas City now for a limited time at all your KC Whataburger locations. Get the Pico de Gallo burger, 2 large beef patties, 2 slices of pepper jack cheese, Pico de Gallo, and creamy cilantro lime. How about the sweet and spicy bacon burger, 2 large beef patties, American and Monterey Jack cheese, bacon, grilled onions, and topped with sweet and spicy pepper sauce. Or grab the patty melt. Even the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich. They're all perfect with the Whataburger banana pudding shake. Remember, Whataburger's open 24 hours a day. Breakfast served 11 p. to 11 a. And don't forget, you can get all your Whataburger favorites and more by downloading the Whataburger app with the QR code. Whataburger, proud sponsor of the Red, Gold, and Bold. $30 million for Jaylen Moore. What makes that contract a success, Sam?
Insurance. I mean, the Chiefs didn't have it a year ago. I mean, but look, Jaylen Moore could obviously start at right tackle a year from now. But the Chiefs used 4 of these guys last year at offensive tackle and still had another one on their roster with Ethan Driscoll. Like, we know Josh Simmons has the injury history. Jeff just mentioned we don't know if his knee's even going to hold up for the entire year. Like, you have insurance in a way you didn't last year. And I know it seems pricey on the face of it, especially for a team that can't spend a lot of money in the offseason because of what they're spending on Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, look, Jaylen Moore was the most expensive free agent acquisition they had. He's still, do you know where he ranks among left tackle? Not all tackles, by the way, just left tackle in terms of guaranteed money, 22nd.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't that expensive, relatively speaking, to that market, the left tackle market. So
that I will guarantee you that everyone, all 21 in front of him, start.
I would say that's probably the case. I don't know if I would say, I without looking at it, if I'd say I'd guarantee it.
If you will give me 20 of 21, I will put. I don't even need to look. Yeah. I'll put it any number again on it. That at least 20 of the 21 start, and I would find that the 21st would be. We would end up haggling over a guy who's coming back from injury or something that I forgot got hurt. Like, your point is valid. I think it's a very good point. I'm not disputing.
Well, J.C. Latham for the Titans is one of them, and he's not going to be starting. Dan Moore's going to be starting. So yeah, there's at least one. But yeah, I still think this is a team that's in need of that insurance, considering that rookie left tackle, guy with an injury history, and a team that played 4 left tackles a year ago. You have to have a plan B if Josh Simmons does wind up being plan A when you arrive in St. Joe a month from now.
Is that position worth this much money potentially just sitting on the bench, Jeff?
No, I don't think it is. And your plan B got traded to the Bears. You could have always gone back to Joe Thuney and kept him if you were going to spend that kind of money on a guy who wasn't going to play. Or you could have kept Justin Reid.
We saw that plan B, right? We saw that plan B against the Eagles. Like, we saw that plan B a lot last year, and it was not great.
Well, it would require –
It got them through. Got them there.
Yeah.
Right. They changed their offense last year. I've tried to make this point. Like, Joe Thuney was not good at left tackle. And then Mike Caliendo was left guard when Joe Thuney was left tackle. Like, that plan did not work last year in a way that people thought it did.
Mike Caliendo might still be your left guard.
It could be. Yeah.
What are you going to say, Soren?
I think your point is very valid. And I think it's something we do need to remember is there were other, this is a choose your own adventure book, right? Like, which path are you going to take? There were other paths to take. It's keeping Joe Thuney, not putting the tag on Trey Smith. I mean, you got to kind of fold him into this equation as well. You're taking a guy who's a good guard, right? If you want to call him very good, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. He's not great. He's not the best guard in football. He's going to be the highest paid. And I get it. We've discussed that, the youth and all the reasons to do it. They're not dumb for doing that, but it is a path they chose. There was another path to take. I do think the thing that's interesting on Moore is Moore came before Simmons. You didn't know you had Simmons. If the draft had happened right after the season and you'd known you'd had Simmons, would they have signed more? Do you think, Sam, that signing would have happened?
I don't think so, but they should have signed somebody. And that's my point. Is like, you cannot go into a season that is as important at the Kingsley Suamataia lesson as how you actually handled the player itself. Is how did you handle the environment? How did you handle your secondary options? And the fact that they had none should have been their biggest takeaway from that. And man, how different would our conversation on this first half hour of this podcast be if Josh Simmons was it? If that was all you had at left tackle and Wanya Morris was your primary backup.
But I guess the argument to that is you don't have to pay $30 million to have an insurance policy, right? You could have paid less money and found maybe a less competent player. But if you're not playing the guy at all, why spend that much money and cost yourself somewhere else in your salary cap? That's the point I'm making.
I think that is a valid point. I think the question will be, in all likelihood, we're going to see him play, right? Even if he doesn't start. At some point, somebody will go down. Jawaan Taylor's missed a game or, missed snaps in games. We're going to see him step in somewhere, right?
Right tackle next year.
Well, and then I think that's a key point as well. And you've mentioned that a couple of times. But I do think it is valid. There is a bit of a, overreaction. But I think the point, I think it all comes together in the sense that, but if you're going to overreact, protecting the quarterback is where you overreact. And if you end up not having to use all your bullets, but the quarterback's upright and throwing, I do think it's worth it. I mean, I'll answer my own question. I think it's worth it. And that decision did come before Josh Simmons was available. And so that makes it even more excusable. And to Sam's point, there is a fallback. Even if he doesn't play a snap this year, he gives them, if they like what they see, and if he can play, he gives them the luxury of walking away from Jawaan Taylor's contract next year and playing right tackle. So there's nothing wrong with the plan, but there were other options.
Yeah. Look, if Jaylen Moore ends up making $15 million on the Chiefs bench this year, the Chiefs are going to have a really good year.
Yeah. I hope that Jaylen Moore, if he's one of the 5 best, he should be competing in guard as well.
Yeah, that's the caveat, right? He better be able to play.
Yes.
Like if he's on the bench because he can't play, then that's a problem.
If you see one guy look like Kingsley Suamataia and one guy look like Wanya Morris again, and it's just they threw a first-round pick and $30 million at the spot, it has gotten worse. Let me quote Buddy Bell. It will have officially gotten worse because you didn't address other needs and you did this and you swung and missed. I don't think anybody is predicting that it's going to be worse, right? I don't see the scenario where that happens. Let's talk a little bit about the relationship between Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Jeff, is there fear that the fact that they're friends, that Patrick Mahomes, or even just the familiarity, like I do wonder if this offense wants to get more explosive, wants to go downfield. I don't think there's going to be an issue, but I'm curious. Sometimes, you can't play. You can't play Pena. Why? Because I just traded him to Detroit, right? Like the old Moneyball deal where the manager didn't want to play. The first baseman that they gotten, and so Billy Bean traded him away. There wasn't an option, right? That's not going to happen in the NFL. It was never an option to trade Travis Kelce away. But you get my point. Like, hey, I'm familiar with this. I'm secure. I'm going to go to 87. And instead of 87 being 8 yards down the field and running towards the goal line, he's 5 yards down the field and not moving at all because he's gotten old. And you're not even realizing you're doing the same muscle memory thing of going to Travis Kelce, but the payout's not as good. Do we worry that could be an issue with their relationship?
It'll be an adjustment for them. And I'll go back to, I think it was that 2021 season when they started slowly and were struggling. And there was friction between those guys then because Kelce felt like he was not being looked at enough in certain situations and wanted the ball more. Like Kelce, I think Kelce's obviously a great player and a great dude, but he's volatile. When things aren't going his way, he can become very emotional about it. And I think probably what they'll have to do, and what they probably will do, is have a conversation about how this will work out this year and see what it's going to look like to have a more diminished role for Travis in this offense. I know Andy kind of talked about this a little bit in his last press conference as far as playing time and said, I don't roll this way or whatever. But you better have everybody be on the same page type situation, because I remember covering the 49ers back in the late 90s when Terrell Owens was coming of age, and Steve Young had Brent Jones, an aging tight end. And I remember talking to T.O., and he said, I'm coming up and I can't get the ball because Steve wants to always throw it to Brent. And that was the problem, because he and Brent Jones were best friends. And that could very much be a part of this situation too. I think they'll weather it, but I do think there'll be some growing pains.
Where you got a fear on this at all, Sam?
Well, it is going to be an adjustment. I think the biggest adjustment is going to be from Travis Kelce, because the scheme better make the adjustment that Travis Kelce is not their number one option. And look, he does look slimmer. He disputed the fact when a reporter said, "Hey, you said you lost 25 pounds." He said, "I didn't say that. That was out there. I certainly didn't say that. I would be stunned if he's lost 25 pounds. He does look slimmer. But even if he's in the best shape of his life at 35 going on 36, like, the offensive scheme can't make him the top option. And look, I don't think they will either. But I think the adjustment's going to have to be for Travis Kelce more often than not, because almost half of the Chiefs' plays are picked out before the play starts as where the ball's going. And the reason I say that is the Chiefs throw the ball quickly, under 2.5 seconds, on 46% of their throws. It's the 8th highest percentage of the league. And it's also where they're most successful. Like, Patrick Mahomes has a 106 quarterback rating on those plays, as opposed to when he holds the ball a long time, it's 81. So their most successful plays are getting rid of the ball quickly and saying, this is where the ball's going. It's a quick throw. Much fewer of those throws should be towards Travis Kelce than what they've been in the past, in which case he's the player to me that's going to have to make the biggest adjustment. And he's long said he prioritizes winning, doesn't care about the rest. This might be a bigger test of that than he's ever had.
I think some of that, though, is, do you think it'll be 46% on, quick throws again this year? Or do you think, because you can't want to go down the field and get rid of the ball super quick, right? So, do you think that number is going to change? That if they get better protection, he will hold the ball longer, they will go down the field, and there will be more of a read and get the ball down the field to wideouts?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that especially, this is what I mentioned with Joe Thuney, by the way, is late in the year, the Chiefs said, we have to throw the ball quickly. It's the only option if we're going to play left guard at left tackle. Joe Thuney can at least put a body on somebody, but you got to throw the ball quickly. So I think that percentage is elevated because of that. But Rashee Rice also elevates that percentage, and they didn't have him in the lineup last year. So I could see those two things, getting Rashee Rice back, even if they had better protection, winding up in a wash, and they're still around that number in 2025.
Yeah, I do think that I don't worry too much about Mahomes. I like that he's my friend, I'm going to take care of him type of mindset. No. But I think you get into habits, right? And he's been rewarded handsomely for looking for 87. And so I do think,
especially in improvisational situations, that's really where he shows up, right?
Yeah. In third downs. I mean, third downs, got to have it. And I mean, it's the reason that Sky Moore was never able to elevate himself is because you have to have a relationship with the quarterback on the key downs. He might throw it to you on first or second down. When it's 3rd and 6 and you have to have it to move the chains, he's looking at the guys he trusts. I do think that Rashee Rice fits that bill. Worthy does more than he did a year ago. But we know that Travis Kelce fits the bill. There was an interesting play, for example, at mandatory minicamp the last day, Wednesday, and there's nobody open. And so Mahomes on a 7-on-7 drill, there's no line, is just staring at Travis Kelce. And he ends up throwing it to him high, and they read the play differently. Travis Kelce ends up, he goes like this, like, hey, I thought you were going to throw it over Drew Tranquil, who was defending him, and lob it to me, but instead you fired a bullet for me to high point it. Nobody was open, so it was just, let's see what this guy can improvise and try and get open. Like, those plays happen. Those plays will still happen over the course of the regular season, to Jeff's point, like the improvisation, and like you've got third down, have to have it play. And that's where, I'm not saying the relationship has to change if nobody's open, but you can't assume that play is going to be open in the way you probably anticipated it would be in the past. This guy's guarded one-on-one. Something's going to happen here. Yeah. I don't know that that's going to happen now.
I'll say this: there's something on Andy Reid as well. Don't make it playground football all the time. Be more successful in your original design and get somebody open. I mean, some of this is on Andy Reid as well.
Big moves, bigger vibes. If you haven't heard, Besame Wellness is now Suede Cannabis. Our colors and name may have changed, but you'll still experience the same great service on top of better deals, longer hours, and faster delivery. Smithville, Liberty, Kansas City, Warrensburg, and North Kansas City. No matter which location you visit, you'll feel right at home. Find the location nearest you and shop online at SuadeCannabis.com. Life should be dope. Let's make it happen. Suede Cannabis.
Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's talk about what is a successful year for Travis Kelce. It's easy to say, like, hey, winning a championship, right? We know that everyone will be satisfied with, or should be satisfied with whatever they've done as long as it adds up to winning a championship. Let's go beyond that, though, and talk and, quantify it numerically. What's a successful year for Travis Kelce, Jeff? What makes this year a success?
Oh, I think if he's in double digits in yards per catch, that'd be a big thing. Because he was at 8 last year, 8.5.
Yeah.
So I think if he's back in that realm, that's a big thing. I would put him at 650 to 700 yards and maybe 60 to 65 catches. I think if that's where he lands, which is a long way from where we were used to seeing him, I think the Chiefs' offense will be dramatically improved and way more dangerous, because that means Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, all these guys are going to be more involved and have bigger roles. So that's what I see being the big thing for him.
What do you call a success, Sam?
This was a more interesting question than I think people give it credit for, because I think what's a successful season for him, this is the first time I'd answer it this way, by the way, whether a 1,000-yard season, a 95 catch season is good for the Chiefs, because last year he was their number one option and caught 97 passes, but to Jeff's point, 8.5 yards a catch, which is why I love the way you answered that, Jeff. Yards per catch, I think is going to be the most successful season for him. Like if he's back up averaging 10.5, 11 yards a catch, that's a success for him. So I ended up putting it at 60 catches. Last year he had 97 catches for 823. So I put it at 60 catches for more like 750. So not a huge dip in yards, but a huge dip in catches to get those yards.
I'll add in a number here. How about this? This is the last 3 years. I think it's not just about, I think, the point about yards per catch is absolutely spot on, right? If he can be more of a making, more out of each catch, I think that would be great. But he has dropped from 25% to 22% to 20% of the yardage the last 3 years, right? And I need to go back and put it. I just had that thought right now and go look at what were his target percentages, though. Have the target percentages. My suspicion is they've gone up.
Yeah.
Right. So he's being targeted more or not gone down and returning less. And so, I think as a team, we all agree him be the number 3 guy would be great. If he could be 800 yards and 7 touchdowns, but be the third option in an offense. Like 2 years ago, Patrick Mahomes, 3 years ago now, Patrick Mahomes had 5,200 yards passing, led the league in passing yards. If he's 800 of 5,000, okay. If he's 800 of 3,800, they got problems, right? Like, so it's a little bit of what does the offense do to define it. But I think it's successful. I think Jeff hit it. I think he knocked it out of the park with the first answer. It's get back over 10 yards per catch. It means that they found the right way to scheme him, get more out of him. But I think the only way that happens is if he's less a priority of getting the ball to.
Yeah. By the way, last year he was at 8.5 yards a catch. The year before he was at 10.6. He had never been below 12 before 2 years ago. Then you see 10.6 and 8.5, which is, I mean, he was almost at 13 yards a catch for his career before 2 years ago.
And I'd almost bet you, going back to the improvisational part of this, that a lot of his yardage came in situations where the play was broken and Mahomes found it. Whatever the first play called didn't lead to him catching the football. It was what came after it. And
100%.
as I think about him and his career and Mahomes' career, really, like that kind of synergy, chemistry, intuitiveness is Mahomes hasn't had that with everybody. I think we kind of think that he just magically makes everybody great. He's had it with Tyreek Hill. He's had it with Kelce. He had it with Jerick McKinnon and a little bit with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And there's something for these guys who he's going to play with to be able to take that pressure off of Kelce to be that guy who he turns to in those moments and become those kind of players. Because even Rashee Rice has not had those kind of moments with Mahomes in his brief career. And if he starts having those, then it makes it less likely that Mahomes has to go to Kelce in those moments.
Well, the other thing is, to point out that this isn't just scheme, it's also player related. I mentioned the yards per catch. You look at the yards after catch per reception. Yeah. Last year, he was at 3.5 yards after catch per reception. His previously, he'd only been under 5 once. And he drops to 3.5. Like for his career, he's at 6 before last year. He gets to 3.5. Like a lot of this is just, I mean, this is an aging player. You see, these are the metrics you see with an aging player. And by the way, he's unbelievable for 35 going on 36. Like you don't see 35 and 36-year-olds putting up these numbers even.
Yeah. Everyone they'll go to Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez. Like, look at that. Yeah. Yeah, absolute outliers. Let me give you other tight ends that were Pro Bowlers at 27. They've been retired for 4 years at this point. They've been running the league.
And by the way, guys with big catch radiuses, and that's not been the reason that Travis Kelce has been really successful. Has not been his catch radius. Let me show you the yards after catch for the end of Tony Gonzalez's career: 2.6, 2.7, 3 flat, 2.7, 3. 2.9 and 3. That's 6 years of 3 or less for Tony Gonzalez. Travis Kelce's last year at 3.5 was the lowest of his career. Like same position, they get yards in a much different way.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Jeff, you kind of sent us down the road of where we were going to go next, and that's about the wide receivers and their chemistry with Patrick Mahomes. Should that now be there? Like this is not, Hollywood Brown's first time looking at the playbook and first time knowing how Pat scrambles, and everybody's been there. Like, should we see a much more cohesive group there on that side because they've had time with Mahomes?
Yeah, I think should be expected. Yeah, I mean, especially with Rashee Rice, we saw that at the beginning of last year, what it looked like after a full offseason of working with Mahomes and Xavier Worthy. Again, I've been up and down on him, but I give him credit because he did come a long way last season and did show some things in other roles outside of being take the top off the defense person. And so he should have a better feel for that. And Hollywood Brown was, we never saw it on the field, but in that offseason of last year, he was doing a lot of things with Mahomes and showing a lot of promise. And so there's got to be a comfort level there. And I think Sam may have said this a few months back when talking about it. I think Brett Beach made a comment about Mahomes trusting Xavier Worthy. I don't know how he phrased it, but there is something about a quarterback like Mahomes who is so creative in what he does that working with other creative people on the field gets him going and kind of takes him to a different level. And so I think he loved that about Tyreek Hill. He loves that about Travis Kelce. Loved it about Jerick McKinnon, like I said, guys who knew how to get in the right spot and not just run the play, but to do things off script. And so they have more of that there. And just as importantly, he knows their strengths better. He knows where they'd like to have the football and how they like to have it and what coverages work for them. So all that stuff should make it a better product.
Should we see a big jump, Sam?
Yeah. I mean, look, I've been the one that's been asking these questions in the media room all week about the wide receivers coming back, because I think it's the under talked about part of this offense is that a year ago at this time, Xavier Worthy was standing next to Matt Nagy watching mandatory minicamp. 2 years ago at this time, Rashee Rice was coming out of the huddle and multiple times running the wrong direction out of the huddle, and Patrick Mahomes was reorganizing where he should be lining up for plays during his rookie year. Hollywood Brown answered my question and said that the wide receivers are fighting over which spots they want to take in certain plays because they all know what everyone's role is and what the player who's most likely to get the ball. Like, that's a difference. And what prompted me to ask these questions is going back and looking at the top targets that they've had year by year. Last year, the two wide receiver targets, the two wide receivers who lead them in receiver targets are Xavier Worthy and DeAndre Hopkins last year. Two guys first year in the offense. In 2023, Rashee Rice leads them in targets by a mile. He was a rookie that year. By the way, Sky Moore was fourth and Kadarius Toney were fifth, both first year in the offense. In 2022, their leaders in wide receiver targets are Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS and Justin Watson. Those are their top three guys, all new players to that offense. This year, I expect their leader in wide receiver targets to be three guys, health pending, of course, to be three guys who were here last year. And this is the first time since since they traded Tyreek Hill in 22, that's been the case. And where it happens, like, I've never seen Andy Reid so eager to agree with something that this is where your scheme should help. This is the time of year where you should be able to not be teaching guys something, but actually layering on and altering your offense. Like, this is your chance to add on to your scheme that maybe the personnel has hindered you in the past training camps.
Maybe he's just become a super positive guy.
I will say there's been a different attitude with Andy Reid all summer. Like, he hasn't been bummed to talk to us, I think, in ways that I would describe in the past.
Let me hatch this. Just 100% speculation. It's his last round.
I was going to say that too.
And he's soaked it in, and he's like, I'm going to, he appreciates the moment, and could it be?
Well, sure it could be. I would not be predicting that this is Andy Reid's last year, but would I say it's 100% he's going to come back for another year? No. I mean, I do. I trust him when he thinks this is a year-to-year decision, but I also know that he's got a wife who enjoys him being the head coach of a team that's in the Super Bowl all the time. He's got grandkids who enjoy the fact that he's a head coach and they hear his name on TV. And I think those will be the things that eventually pull him away, and they haven't pulled him away yet. So I wouldn't predict that this would be his last year.
I've always been, Jeff, of the opinion that he's going to coach till he just physically can't, that he's one of those guys. This is what he does. And to Sam's point, he's got a support group that kind of agrees, right? Like that family has figured out how to have a major member of the family be a coach. Like Dick Vermeil's family had that as well, right? Yeah. His wife did all this stuff, and Dick would talk about how, I was never around, and like they have that chemistry. I think that's an important part of being a coach, because I think there's a lot of time, Jimmy Johnson got divorced, Bill Belichick got divorced. Like that family fits within the football. It wasn't one of our topics, but I'm with Sam. I just think it's kind of a different vibe.
Yeah.
All means.
Again, it would not. I agree with you. When Sam said that, the first thing I thought was, maybe he is thinking more about retirement, and that's not. I don't think we've debated this before. I don't think he's going to be around till he's like literally like falling down on the sideline, take me off on a stretcher. I do think that he cares a lot about not just his family, but I think his football family, and I think he does. If you gave him some true serum, he probably in his mind has an idea of like, I'd like to leave Matt Nagy and Spagnuolo and Dave Tobe, these guys, an opportunity to be successful without me. And if I'm walking out the door with Patrick Mahomes last year of football, that's not going to do it. So I do think that I think when he retires, that will be part of his thinking of, I want to give one of these guys a chance to run a team to be very successful in the way that you saw Bruce Arians do that with Todd Bowles, who's been running the Bucs for the last 3-4 years, right? He gave him Tom Brady and a defending Super Bowl champion.
I did ask Andy Reid at the owners' meetings on, I think it was the last day in March or maybe the first day in April. I said, could you envision coaching Patrick Mahomes through the length of his current contract. And he said, that'd be a long time.
Yeah.
And I think, first of all, it's the first time where he's kind of at least put some sort of endpoint on it that I don't think quite that long. So I think he at least has something in his mind, but I do think it year to year, if he doesn't feel like it's the time, then it's not going to be the time. I don't think he's going to feel like, hey, I'm a certain age, therefore my grandkids are a certain age. I think it's my family supports me now. I still enjoy doing the job. Why would I leave?
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this: the quality of the team, as the Travis Kelce's and the people of that stature leave, like it's not going to always be you're the number one team, top pick to be in the Super Bowl. I think when it gets to that level, he'll have a different view of, hey, how long do I want to coach? It's not guaranteed to be walking to the Super Bowl every year.
Couple of people talk about being impressed he doesn't get burned out. Going for the record, someone let Florio know because he's talked about the retirement speculation. And I love Tommy, like, don't go all Florio on us, please don't. He's in his mid-60s. It is a relevant question.
We're not reporting he's retiring. We
Yes.
can ask the question about when he might.
Yeah, when he might. So settle down, Tommy. Don't I don't have there's no parallel to a fan reacting in a way that you are, but settle down. Like this is a question that's going to be had every year at this point in his career, and should be. And frankly, if Brett Beach and Clark Hunt aren't asking it and wondering why and thinking about it, then they're not doing their jobs, right? Because that's just where we are at this point. Patrick Mahomes and his place in history. Will that motivate him, to be all he can be, Jeff? How much does, where he is? I talked about on the radio show, like, what would it take? I said, let's work backwards. What would it take for next year Patrick Mahomes not to be the number one player in the NFL? Right? And we'll discuss that later on this podcast. We don't need to go through all that. But, I mean, I think he is definitely driven to be the best, and I think he knows championships are the key to doing it. But he also knows he plays a big role. His success as a player is a big part of winning the championships. How much does that drive him in your mind? And will that be a benefit this year, the fact that he's got a little bit of a carrot, that he's got to bounce back? He's now been bested by Jalen Hurts. Some would say in 2 Super Bowls, even though he won one of them, but a lot of people thought Jalen Hurts outplayed him in the first time they went head-to-head. How much will that motivate him?
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I don't think it's the driving force that it was earlier in his career when he would play the Bears and be like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever that was, or just posting on social media when the NFL Network top player, 100 players come out and he wasn't number one. I don't know. He's got kids now. He's been married. He's an owner of sports teams. He's won championships. Some of that stuff, I don't think people try to compare him to Michael Jordan that way. I don't think Michael Jordan was maniacal. And in some ways, it's just like, and not a good person in some ways.
Oh, he was not.
Yeah. And so Patrick Mahomes clearly is, you see him at the baseball game. You see him at the Kentucky Derby. I think he enjoys the life he's leading. And I think he still wants to win championships and do all that stuff. But I think he's at that point in his life where he understands other people decide that. And if you're going to spend all your time on social media trying to come back at people, and that's just a waste of time after a certain point. So I do think he cares a lot about winning championships. I think he made the comment in his press conference the other day where he said, people talked about being the top offense and this and that. He said, well, what bothers me more is we lost in the Super Bowl. I'd rather, if you give me one option or the other, I'm taking the Super Bowl over us being this prolific offense again. And I thought that was a really mature answer. Obviously, it's an obvious answer, but the way he phrased it was that I'm not caught up in that anymore. Like, that to me is, I've done 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. I've won MVPs. I'm in a place that a lot of guys are trying to get to, who've, like Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. So there's comfort there, but he knows those guys are coming. And every year they're getting better and winning MVP. So they're getting closer, I think. So that's what's going to drive him, is the understanding that I'm not always going to be able to just go out there and beat these guys. At some point, they might be able to beat me.
I think there is, whether it's his place in history or just the joy of the game, dumping down for 5 yards to slappy wideouts is not fun for a quarterback, right? And all you got to do is see Tom Brady, who said, wait a minute, down in Tampa, everything's up and ready to roll. I got receivers galore. I'm gone. I'm out. Enough of this. Because they were in the conference championship game the year he left New England. So it's not like he was looking at a situation like, we can't win here. right? Maybe he did see over the horizon, see that the talent was falling off, but you still want to, whether it's chasing records, being a quarterback, it's fun throwing the ball for big plays and that kind of stuff. I mean, Sam, maybe it's not history. Maybe it's just getting back to playing the high wire act that every quarterback enjoys, being a part of.
Yeah. Brady lost to the Titans in that wild card game the year before he left, right? The 2019
Is that right?
season.
My bad.
Look, I can't say it any better than Jeff. I just wholeheartedly agree with him. And I tried to make that point last year whenever remember that Raiders thing happened where the rookie had taken the little Muppet doll and made a Kermit the Frog joke. And I said, he's past this. And even acknowledged that 3 years ago, I would have been writing all about that and saying, wow, you shouldn't have poked the bear. But I just think he's past it. And I think championships does that. I agree with Jeff that I think family lifestyle and being content with who you are passes that. Patrick Mahomes is past the point of having to prove anything to anybody. At this point, it's just about the joy of winning and the absolute suck feeling of losing games. I see that from him when they lose games. He is in a pissed off mood in the locker room after games. He is with us in press conferences. That's just the nature of the competitiveness of who he is. But I agree with Jeff that I don't see this Michael Jordan personality in practice of my teammates hate me because I'm just driving them to be better. And that's my strategy of how to drive them to be better. He's the most popular guy in that room. And that's a distinct difference. Even as, yes, I mean, he is hard on teammates at times. I mean, he's constantly coaching teammates at practice, but it's in a way that's trying to build them up, not in a way that's trying to motivate them with negativity. And I think he's past the negativity driving him. I think he's to the point of, I know what it feels like to win a Super Bowl. And even more, I know what it feels like to lose a Super Bowl. And that's not a feeling I want again. And I really think that's the entirety of what drives him at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. He does seem to be the best example of having that competitive edge while balancing it with having a real life, not screwing up his life. Right. And let's be honest, he's got people that we haven't heard much lately, but whether it was his brother or sometimes his wife on social media that could have made it combustible for him. And yet he was always smooth. He was always cool as the other side of the pillow when it came to handling all that stuff. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything out of LeBron. His family there doesn't seem to be any problems at home. He seems to be able to play at a really high level. Maybe that's the better comparison. He's found that, that work-life balance to where he makes them both work effectively, and maybe that adds to both of them, makes both of them better because of it. Maybe if Jordan could have figured that part out, it would have been a little bit easier for him. I don't know. No one's complaining about the 6 championships. I do know that. No. So that's a big part of it. Listen, you can support the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast by supporting our great sponsors like GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crew. Every project comes with a written warranty. GAN keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Focus on your business. They'll focus on your parking lot. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GANAsphalt.com. Suede Cannabis. If you haven't heard, Best of Me Wellness is now Suede Cannabis. Find the location nearest you and shop online at SuedeCannabis.com. And our friends at Whataburger. For a limited time, get the Pico de Gallo burger, the sweet and spicy bacon burger, patty melt, the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich. It is all available right now at Whataburger. They're open 24 hours a day. They are open 7 days a week. They even serve breakfast, 11 p to 11 a. You can wash it down with Sam's favorite, the banana pudding shake, if you want. Get it at Whataburger today. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.